Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. A White House official and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's senior spokesperson have tested positive for the CCP virus. Both are fully vaccinated. An advocacy group says North Carolina's door-to-door vaccination program could be illegal. We get an expert's take on it. The Epoch Times had its first in-person panel discussion of the year, and it's called Defending the Constitution, Why It Matters Now More Than Ever. Constitutional experts and rights defenders spoke at the event. The largest group of illegal immigrants this year crossing through the Rio Grande Valley. They are from Central America, Haiti, Cuba, Venezuela, and even Africa. A Chinese man was detained in China over books of faith found in his home. The situation caught a congressman's attention. A White House official and a spokesperson for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi have tested positive for the CCP virus. Both are fully vaccinated. This comes as a sixth member of the Texas Democratic delegation that fled their state to D.C. tests positive.
First, let me confirm that yesterday a fully vaccinated White House official tested positive for COVID-19 off campus. In accordance with our rigorous COVID-19 protocols, the official remains off campus as they wait for a confirmatory PCR test. The White House Medical Unit has conducted contact tracing interviews and determined no close contacts among White House principals or staff or the president. The individual has
The senior spokesperson in Speaker Pelosi's office on Monday tested positive for COVID. That person is also fully vaccinated. Officials confirmed to Axios these two individuals attended the same reception last week. Pelosi's deputy chief of staff, Drew Hamill, said on Tuesday the aide had no contact with Pelosi since the exposure. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says there will be breakthrough cases. And the Delta variant now accounts for more than 80% of new CCP virus cases in the U.S. That's according to Dr. Anthony Fauci. He testified at a Senate hearing today, and things got heated between him and Republican Senator Rand Paul over NIH funding to the Wuhan lab. Let's listen in.
Dr. Fauci, as you are aware, it is a crime to lie to Congress. Section 1001 of the U.S. Criminal Code creates a felony and a 5-year penalty for lying to Congress. This research matches, these are Dr. Ebright's words, this research matches, indeed epitomizes, the definition of gain-of-function research done entirely in Wuhan, for which there was supposed to be a federal pause. Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Microphone.
Your microphone.
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function.
So
let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans,
right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about.
How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2, that's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well,
we don't
wait
know
a minute.
If it did come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator. those viruses are molecularly impossible
No one's
to
saying
result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses are
SARS-CoV-2.
pandemic.
Senator Paul,
We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were
they're not.
animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And
won't
you
admit the truth.
And you
Senator
implying
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individual. I totally resent
could
that.
have
And
been.
if anybody
could
is
have been.
lying here, Senator, it is you.
A coalition of Republican House reps are submitting an amicus brief to the Supreme Court. They are pushing to defend the Second Amendment and protect the right to carry guns in public.
Today, the Supreme Court is taking up a similarly historic case challenging New York's onerous and unlawful limits on our right to concealed carry for self-protection outside of our home. If the plaintiffs prevail in this case, it will be the biggest win for Second Amendment rights in more than a decade.
New York lawmaker Claudia Tenney is leading 175 House Republicans in an amicus brief to the Supreme Court. They're urging the High Court to overturn a New York state law that imposes limits on carrying concealed handguns outside of the home. They pledged to defend the Second Amendment right of law-abiding gun owners in New York State. Outreach workers in North Carolina are bringing vaccine doses to people's doors. The program has its supporters, but an advocacy group is calling it a civil liberty violation. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story and a lawyer's take on it.
North Carolina's Mecklenburg County launched its Doses to Doors program last week. This outreach worker told WCNC what his interactions sound like.
So now would you like to get a shot? Yes. We've got somebody right here on site.
Another volunteer told a different media that their job is to dispel rumors. But Health Freedom Defense Fund, an advocacy group from Idaho, is accusing the door-to-door campaign of violating people's zone of privacy. In a statement, they said, "We don't walk up to people and ask them, 'Are you on antidepressants?' We understand that it's not our business to meddle in other people's business, and it's not the government's business either." John Guzet, a senior fellow for legal studies at the John Locke Foundation, says you can't break into somebody's house, but that doesn't mean you can't knock on the door and ask questions.
To me, it sounds like you wouldn't agree with this advocacy group's assessment that this is a violation of zone of privacy, even if it's about medical history that they're knocking on your door about.
I'm not aware of any precedent for that. I'm not aware of any case law that says somehow there's this implicit right to enter and knock on the door and ask to be admitted, that there's an exception when it comes to medical information. I don't think there is. Medical information is certainly private and it's protected not just by the Constitution, but by federal statutes. So you don't have to tell these people anything.
But Guzet is of the opinion that this program could backfire because of the little trust some people have in government workers. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
The Epoch Times hosted an in-person event in New York City called Defending the Constitution, Why It Matters Now More Than Ever. The event included constitutional experts and rights defenders who've taken steps to preserve the Constitution. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
The event kicked off with Alan Dershowitz, a Democrat who taught at Harvard for 50 years.
Today, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube say they have the right to censor. They have the right to take the President of the United States and the ex-president off their platforms at the same time that they promote Reverend Farrakhan and the head of Iran and repression in China and all kinds of other repressive measures. And we shouldn't be allowing elitists to determine what we read, what we see, and what we hear.
And Che Ahn, the pastor who battled in court and got churches reopened during the lockdowns. His father was arrested for being a pastor in communist North Korea, so he understands the value of having freedom of speech.
A lot of times, unless we understand what communism is all about, you really can't really understand why some of the people that are taking a stand for freedom and First Amendment rights are doing so.
President of Wall Builders Timothy Barton tried to clear up some misconceptions of America's history of slavery.
is there are literal people who argue today the Declaration of Independence, when Jefferson said that all men are created equal, he was only talking about the white men. Go back and read his original draft, because he emphasized who he was talking about, who these men were. Jefferson, contrary to what a lot is told today, Jefferson actually advocated against slavery most of his life, that a lot of people have no idea, but even...
He went on to say that 11 of the 13 original colonies opposed slavery, but at that time, the former president of the Continental Congress, John Hancock, wanted the Declaration of Independence to be unanimous among the 13 colonies. And at that time, South Carolina and Georgia had not yet tried to end slavery. Members of the audience were happy they attended the event of such a unique setting.
Everybody found a home here tonight. It's beautiful. People were able to disagree in public and not try to kill and or cancel each other.
Well, I thought the event was wonderful. And to be in New York and to be around so many people that are conservative or that are, believe in the Constitution, that love America, that brings tears to my eyes and just joy to my heart.
Kevin Roberts, who is the CEO of Texas Public Policy Foundation, encouraged everyone to go to the next school board meeting, no matter where your child goes to school. And if you are frustrated with that experience, then run for school board. He says that's what they've been doing in Texas. Jason Perry, NTD News.
One of America's top toy sellers is in a bit of hot water. A contractor working for Hasbro says he was required to watch a video about introducing kids to critical race theory through products. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story and Hasbro's response.
And I've always thought it was just...
David Johnson is a packing engineer working for Hasbro. He recently leaked this company video to Project Veritas, calling it unnecessarily divisive.
At the age of 5, children show many of the same racial attitudes held by adults. By this age, children are really also sensitive to the status of different racial groups in our society and show a high status bias towards white people, which is the socially privileged group in our society.
Johnson says that in his view, they're implying that 5-year-old children are just as racist as adults, and that the speakers are trying to use Hasbro to market these ideas to children. The two speakers in the video are co-founders of the Conscious Kid, a group that says it dedicates itself to equity and promoting healthy racial identity developments. Hasbro got back to us, saying Project Veritas's report mischaracterizes Hasbro and our values. This was not a mandatory training session. As always, the views expressed by external speakers are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the company. We asked if they agreed with the views expressed by the Conscious Kid, but they didn't say.
You can see it, there's parents rising up around, I'd say the country, but actually just the entire Western world, because of how far critical race theory has just spread throughout our institutions. And parents really need to pay attention to this.
Johnson says he was suspended for the moment while Hasbro investigates the leak, which may have violated his contract. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Over 700 people crossing into one small Texas town in just 3 days. Border agents in the Rio Grande Valley sector encountered the largest group of illegal immigrants so far this year. NTD's Allison Lee has the details.
Customs and Border Protection announced Monday that Rio Grande City Border Patrol agents apprehended 736 illegal border crossers in La Grulla, Texas. They came in 3 large groups over a 3-day period from last Friday to Sunday. And again on Monday, the chief border patrol agent of the Del Rio sector announced that agents encountered a group of over 300 illegal border crossers in the Del Rio sector. They came from countries including Haiti, Cuba, and Venezuela. A Fox reporter at the scene asked them where they came from.
Ghana. You're from Ghana. Okay.
I'm from Haiti.
You're from Haiti. Brazil. You're from Brazil.
The group in the Rio Grande Valley on Friday had 235 people, including 27 unaccompanied children and 21 single adults. Most were from Guatemala. The group on Saturday was the largest that Rio Grande Valley border agents encountered this fiscal year. They had 298 people. One in the group tested positive for the CCP virus. The group on Sunday had 203 people. Most were from Honduras. CBP says even with the spread of the COVID-19 virus, human smugglers continue to try these brazen attempts with zero regard for the lives they endanger, nor to the health of the citizens of our great nation. Border agents have processed all the illegal border crossers. Allison Lee, NTD News.
U.S. lawmakers urge the Biden administration to take immediate action to support the Cuban people, including getting them internet access and imposing sanctions on perpetrators of human rights violations.
During a congressional hearing on Tuesday, several U.S. lawmakers urged the Biden administration to support the Cuban people to get internet access. But they also admit that there's no silver bullet, as the Cuban regime is confiscating people's equipment and adopting censorship tools supported by Beijing.
However, I believe we can still do much more to address this issue by working with private companies and civil society to expand internet access to help Cubans use the VPN and other circumvention tools.
And this committee will be working with technologies within the State Department to open up those lines of communication.
Since July 11th, mass protests have been taking place across the island, and thousands of people were taking to the streets, protesting against the communist regime. It comes amid food and medicine shortages, an economic crisis, and the CCP virus pandemic. Protesters are asking for liberty and freedom.
This regime has responded with brutal repression, causing countless arrests, injuries, and death. On national TV, Miguel Díaz-Canel has called for a war in the streets and to fight using any means.
The regime responded by cutting off internet and telephone services and sending police and Communist Party militants to take back control of cities and towns. It was estimated that Cuban police have arrested 500 demonstrators and activists. They have been persecuted and some are facing legal charges.
Another immediate step we should take is to identify and sanction perpetrators of human rights abuses under the Magnitsky Act.
The U.S. should apply individual sanctions, making full use of the Global Magnitsky Act, targeting top officials and individuals involved in human rights abuses.
The Biden administration has been criticized for doing too little for the Cuban people. On Monday, Fox News quoted a senior U.S. official saying that President Biden is considering increasing staff at the U.S. Embassy in Havana and forming a team to deliver remittances to the Cuban people.
Families started to receive child tax credits last week. While the tax credit is scheduled to end this year, President Biden wants it permanent. Congressional Democratic leaders touted the policy at the Capitol today. NTD's Lin Lin brings us more.
From this month, most families with kids could receive up to $300 in tax credits per child per month. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says it not only helps struggling families, but also those on middle incomes.
About 80 to 90% of all families will get this help. COVID was tough on middle-class families, too. Childcare, loss of job, cutback in hours, cutback in pay. More health care costs, more transportation costs, you name it.
Under this expanded plan, parents could receive up to $1,600 more per child per year. And while the credit is only applicable this year, Biden says he wants to extend it at least through 2025. Tax relief normally comes at the end of the financial year when filing taxes. Parents can unenroll at the IRS website if they want to receive a lump sum in 2022 instead of the monthly payments. About 1 million people have opted out. Lin Lin, NTD News.
Police protection for me, but not for thee. Big city mayors across the country are spending heavily on private security while defunding the police. A watchdog group reveals exactly how much they're costing taxpayers.
Nonprofit Open the Books, or OTB, finds that 25 big cities across the nation have cut or are proposing to cut police budgets. But in 20 of them, the mayors are also spending heavily on their own security details. And this is happening only in cities with Democratic mayors. OTB looked at publicly available data through Freedom of Information Act requests. Here's what they found. Chicago quietly cut 400 officer positions in 2020, but the money spent on protecting city officials went up from $2.7 million in 2015 to $3.4 million in 2020. The cost is $17.3 million total over the past 6 years. And there's San Diego.
In San Diego, in 2020, the city spent $2.6 million on their executive protection detail, while they stripped approximately $5 million out of the police budget.
San Francisco promised to relocate $120 million from their police budget in 2 years. But Mayor London Breed spent $2.6 million on her security detail in 2020. That figure is over $12 million for the past 6 years combined. Baltimore slashed $22 million from its police budget last year, but spent $3.6 million on protecting 3 people: the mayor, the state's attorney for the city, and the police commissioner. New York City took away $1 billion from the NYPD's $6 billion budget, but Mayor Bill de Blasio is getting his own NYPD security detail. The NYPD did not provide the exact numbers to OTB. Similar things are happening in cities like Portland, Los Angeles, and D.C.
A congressman is calling on the Chinese regime to free a detained relative of a Falun Gong practitioner. That's after Chinese police arrested a man at his home in China.
Chinese geological engineer Zhou Deyong last saw his wife and son in Los Angeles about a year ago. He then flew back to China to care for his ailing parents. Now he's being held in a Chinese detention center with little access to the outside world. Zhou's wife Youling says she was shocked to hear the news.
When I heard that he has been arrested, I was a little bit stunned. How could he have been arrested? The police are supposed to catch bad people. He's such a good man and has never done bad things.
Back in April, police officers raided Zhou's home in China without a search warrant. They arrested him after finding Falun Gong-related books and booklets there.
Then I realized they were targeting Falun Gong because I practice Falun Gong.
Falun Gong is a spiritual meditation practice. Despite being arrested for it, Zhou himself is not a practitioner. The family's plight caught the attention of Republican Congressman Gus Bilirakis. He wrote a letter to Chinese Communist Party or CCP leader Xi Jinping, calling for Zhou's release. He told the Epoch Times that it's really unforgivable some of the things the Chinese Communist Party has done to these wonderful people. 2 decades ago, the CCP launched a campaign against the practice. Millions have been detained, tortured, while some have even been killed in China since then. Youling herself was also persecuted. In 2012, she had to spend more than a month in a secret, unlawful detention facility known as a black jail that the CCP uses. Every day, she was fed propaganda materials attacking her faith. The family fled to the U.S. in 2019. But recently, Zhou's parents living in China, aged 87 and 90, are starting to suffer from heart diseases and other health issues.
This time, he's not only unable to take care of his parents, but also the parents themselves may get hurt. As of now, we have been hiding the news from his parents, and we dare not tell them.
Youling says her in-laws don't understand what was wrong with going back to China to take care of them.
This is his home. Why he can't go back to his home?
Now Youling has to lie to her in-laws, saying that Zhou has returned to the U.S. Authorities in China are tight-lipped about Zhou's detention. Zhou's family only started to feel something went wrong when Zhou left their phone calls unanswered for days.
Then I began to look for him because I did not know where he was and where he was detained. I first called the local police station, but they did not answer my calls.
It took Youling a long time to find out where her husband was. Chinese authorities initially denied Zhou from meeting with his lawyer. That was before Zhou mentioned Congressman Bilirakis' letter to them.
When the lawyer told him about me and my son, he started to cry. He said he hopes that we can stay well in the U.S.
Chinese authorities accused Zhou of what they called utilizing heretical religion to sabotage the enforcement of law. It's a common charge that many religious believers have faced in China, and they could face 3 to 7 years in jail.
We used to be a very happy family, but now being persecuted and forced to be separated. I'm also very sad.
A decade ago, a group of Congress members, including Bilirakis, sponsored a House resolution. It called for an end to the ongoing persecution against Falun Gong practitioners in China. Bilirakis says now it's time to bring another one to Congress's attention.
Today marks 22 years since the Chinese Communist Party began persecuting people who practice Falun Gong, the spiritual discipline. The U.S. State Department is calling on the Chinese regime to bring an end to their campaign of repression. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more.
In China, over the last 22 years, the Chinese Communist Party has carried out a brutal persecution of the spiritual group Falun Gong. On Monday, the State Department called for the repression to end.
We recognize 22 years since the People's Republic of China launched a campaign of repression against the Falun Gong movement and its millions of practitioners, advocates, and the human rights defenders working to protect their rights. We call on the PRC to immediately cease its campaign against Falun Gong practitioners and release those imprisoned due to their beliefs.
The CCP's anti-religious campaign involves propaganda, brainwashing, torture, and even murder. The regime uses several methods to force practitioners to renounce their faith. Some of those include forced labor, sleep deprivation, and death resulting from having their organs forcibly removed, sometimes without anesthesia. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told NTD the U.S. needs to stand up for the adherents' religious freedom.
And with respect to the Falun Gong, the absence of religious freedom in China is horrific. It is tragic. It's gone on for too long, and America needs to lead the world to ensure that those people have the opportunity to practice their faith in the way they want to.
Some say the CCP launched its violent campaign to eradicate Falun Gong because the practice's core values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance appear incompatible with communist atheist ideology. Tragically, over 4,600 practitioners are estimated to have been persecuted to death, though this may just be a fraction of the real toll given the number of unreported deaths. The Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China is speaking out on the anniversary. It's calling on governments across the world to end what the Independent China Tribunal calls a state-sponsored, systematic-level persecution of Falun Gong adherents in China. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Up next, select states across the U.S. could receive billions of dollars in settlements from drug distributors they accuse of helping fuel the country's opioid crisis. Stay tuned for more here on NTD News. America's fight against the opioid crisis. Drug distributors are expected to agree to a multi-billion-dollar settlement this week over allegations that they helped fuel the epidemic.
Reuters reported Monday that unnamed sources told them three major distributors would pay a combined $21 billion in the settlement: McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen. Drug maker Johnson & Johnson would pay $5 billion. And the state of New York announced Tuesday that distributors agreed to a $1 billion settlement with the state. Ultimately, the nationwide settlement price tag could change depending on the number of states that agreed to the deal or rejected and pursue a bigger payout. Sources told Reuters more than 40 states are expected to support the nationwide settlement. States will reportedly have 30 days to decide whether to join the global accord, then more time to try to convince their cities and counties to participate in the deal. The distributors are expected to pay the settlement over 18 years. More than 90% of those funds would be used to remediate the opioid crisis, while the rest, about $2 billion, would be used to pay plaintiffs' attorney fees and costs. The distributors are accused of lax controls that allowed massive amounts of addictive painkillers to be diverted into illegal channels, devastating communities. While Johnson & Johnson is accused of downplaying the addiction risk, they have all previously denied wrongdoing. Nearly 500,000 people died from opioid overdoses in the United States from 1999 to 2019. The opioid crisis also appeared to worsen during government-issued lockdown orders. 2020 was a record year for drug overdose deaths, with over 90,000. That's up almost 30% from a year earlier. Opioids were involved in almost 75% of those overdose deaths.
A bit of good news for commuters in New York City. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority won't increase its fares for riders as scheduled this year. But the city's mayor wants the transit system to raise funds in a different way. NTD's Arian Pazdar has that story.
New York City is coming out of a pandemic during which the metro saw record low ridership. On top of that, assaults and random attacks in the subway system have gone up too. Now, with the city coming back to life, the MTA also wants to bring back its ridership, and they know a hike in fares would be a step in the wrong direction. The MTA made an agreement with state lawmakers back in 2009, saying they would increase fares every other year, but not in 2021. The MTA says this would send the wrong message right now. Instead, they call on city and state to raise taxes on the app Airbnb. They argue tourism is coming back, so that sector can help out the transit system. Meanwhile, the mayor on Tuesday brought out a fake check to address congestion pricing, which could bring in $15 billion.
Any problem the MTA says they have could be addressed with this.
Congestion pricing means you would have to pay extra for entering Manhattan by car. The city's mayor says that would free Manhattan from gridlock and would be better for the environment too. Now, back in January, the MTA agreed on implementing congestion pricing, but hasn't met with New Jersey officials to discuss plans yet. Ariane Pastar, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, step aside Richard Branson. It's now Jeff Bezos' turn in the spotlight. The billionaire founder of Amazon blasted off into space this morning. A group of firefighters are preparing to bike across the country for the 20th anniversary of the September 11 attacks. More in just a moment.
The wait is finally over. Shen Yun returns to the stage with an all-new production filled with beauty, majesty, and a powerful message of hope. Discover the lost culture of ancient China. Discover this season, Shen Yun 2021.
Coming to the Palace Theater, July 24th and 25th. Tickets at shenyun.com/Stanford 888-90-SHOWS.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. You saved me! Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos is back from the edge of space. At 9:12 a.m. this morning, he took off with 3 other passengers, and from the sounds of it, they had a real blast. NTD's Colin Frederickson brings us there.
The newest international astronauts, the crew of New Shepard. Congratulations, all 4 of you.
Jeff Bezos blasted off into space Tuesday morning. The Amazon founder, his brother, and 2 other passengers boarded a Rivian that drove them to the West Texas launch site. There, they ascended the launch tower before entering the New Shepard crew capsule, and then...
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Command engine start. 2, 1. Ignition. We have liftoff. New Shepard's cleared the tower.
And New Shepard has cleared the tower on our way to space with our first Cuban crew.
The flight was a little over 10 minutes. 10 minutes of pure joy for the 4 passengers.
Maximum altitude, and you hear they're having quite an experience.
At an altitude of about 47 miles, the capsule detached from the rocket and returned to Earth.
Our booster is about to return to its landing pad. There we see engine relights. The sonic boom.
After a few minutes of zero gravity and a spectacular view, the 4 astronauts began their descent. Parachutes shot out from the pilotless capsule as they fell.
Basically, everything's automated. It's like a drone, and the only people on board are the passengers themselves.
Space expert Brandon Weichert, author of Winning Space, says it's more cost-effective not to have a pilot. He says training and paying for them can be quite expensive.
So in the long run, this could potentially reduce the costs on Blue Origins as they seek to scale their operations up. Right now, it's sort of reserved for the wealthy.
When responding to a status check after landing, Bezos replied,
"Best day ever."
As the crew was exiting, they were greeted with cheers and hugs. During a post-flight press conference, Bezos had this to say.
On how it felt? Oh my God! My expectations were high and they were dramatically exceeded.
Bezos says that the most profound part was looking at the Earth and its atmosphere. He was awestruck by the Earth's beauty and says it's changed him. And his biggest surprise?
The zero-G piece may have been one of the biggest surprises because it felt so normal. It felt so serene and peaceful in the floating.
This all comes after Richard Branson blasted off into space earlier this month with his company Virgin Galactic. Meanwhile, Elon Musk plans on taking 4 commercial passengers into space later this year. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
And this week marks the 52nd anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission to the moon. To commemorate it, NASA announced it will be opening a new visitor center in the San Francisco Bay Area. Here's NTD's Eileen Eng with more at the site.
Here at the Chabot Space and Science Center in Oakland, a new visitor center for NASA is under construction on the anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission. It's called the NASA Experience. NASA built the center near Lake Chabot for easier public access and a better touring experience.
We really also wanted to partner with an institution that would help us establish a future pipeline of high school interns and people who might eventually be inspired to enter technical fields, but also the business and other fields that for the future of space exploration.
Renderings and prototypes of the new center are on display. The artifacts on display are used to take on more of the mundane tasks to free up the astronauts while in outer space. The center is partnered with the Oakland Unified School District to create a student program called the Galaxy Explorers Program to inspire students to intern at NASA. One student worked on a project with friends to show kids the principles of aerodynamics with dry ice and a fan. It shows what airflow looks like and how the design of a paper plane changes the lift. Another team created something that looks like a lightsaber where viewers can identify chemical elements by color after looking through a pair of holographic diffraction grating glasses. With it, people can identify what elements are on a planet.
There'll be interactive exhibits based on NASA missions and content and areas of research. We are also particularly excited about the fact that we will be inviting in NASA staff themselves, researchers, scientists, to share their interest, their curiosity, what they're working on, and perhaps even more importantly, their stories.
The Fremont Bank Foundation is sponsoring $500,000 to a 3,600 square foot studio at the center.
And it's really about the community, bringing them together. Inside of the Redesign Center is the open exhibits and hands-on activities for all ages. And really, we are just deeply honored to be a part of that in the community and being a sponsor for that.
We're looking to go back to the moon. We're looking to land the first woman and the first person of color on the moon in the next years coming, and then we are eventually looking to bring humans to Mars. And so we need to understand what we've done in the past and our successes in the past, but we're also looking forward to the future.
The NASA Experience is scheduled to open this November, in time for school field trips. Eileen Eng, NTD News, California.
A group of firefighters is preparing to bike from California to New York to honor the individuals who lost their lives in the 9/11 attacks. They hope to carry on the memories of those who gave their lives serving the country. NTD's Cynthia Kai has more.
This year marks the 20th anniversary of the September 11 attacks. To honor the first responders who lost their lives that day, a group of firefighters is preparing for a bike ride that will take them from the San Francisco Bay Area to New York City.
The ride came about because we were coming from San Francisco.
The 3,800-mile bike ride began as an idea between Daryl Sales and his son. Initially, a group of motorcyclists planned to ride to New York, but Sales' son didn't have a motorcycle. The father-son team came up with the idea to bike across the country instead.
The significance was to really kind of remember what happened at that time 10 years ago, and now we're looking back at 20 years ago and remembering not just the firefighters and their families that suffered the tragedy, but also the military personnel and their families who now continue to strive to fight for what's right and what's good.
This year, the team has expanded to 10 cyclists who are either current or retired firefighters or military veterans.
Since that time in the War on Terror, we've lost over 7,000 men and women who are trying to prevent this from happening again. I don't want them to be forgotten, and so I'm writing for their memory as well as the memory of all of those that perished on that day.
For the cyclists, the ride is a time for remembrance, reflection, healing, and building the community.
It's about building the community from coast to coast. Those that sacrificed on 9/11 and those that have sacrificed ever since have been serving our community, and they had a heart for community. And so I think the greatest way that we can honor them and memorialize them.
The team will bike approximately 100 miles per day, stopping in towns and cities along the way to meet with local communities. A trailer with the names of every first responder who lost their lives in 9/11 will accompany the riders.
People will ask, what does 343 mean? The 343 is the name of each one of these people on this graphic.
Sales says everyone's lives were impacted that day. Over 2,700 people lost their lives on 9/11. On August 1st, the firefighters will set out from the Santa Clara Fire Station in California. They will arrive at the Brooklyn Bridge and Ground Zero in New York on September 9th, in time for the memorial events. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
San Francisco is revitalizing its time-worn parks and playgrounds. Families have been eagerly awaiting the reopening and are ready for the outdoor activities.
After closing last year for renovations, the Golden Gate Heights Park playground reopened on Tuesday. Parents, pets, and little ones flocked to the playground for some fun. And are they excited for the reopening?
Yes. Yes, we're very excited. We've been waiting by the fence almost every day, looking in.
You see, they miss their friends, so yeah, it's pretty vitally important.
He says he's not worried about his child hanging out with other kids, as he says they naturally social distance.
Because it's been so long since I haven't done this with my friends in a while.
The renovation is part of a goal to turn the city's 13 most time-worn playgrounds into family hangout spots.
The theme here in Golden Gate Heights Playground is nature. You can see nature built into the various elements, and over here we have a beautiful nature exploration area where kids can really climb on boulders and logs, and we're very happy with it.
There was a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the nearly $2.8 million renovation. Improvements include play and picnic areas and park amenities.
If the pandemic has taught us anything, it's just that parks are not nice-to-haves. Parks are must-haves, right? They are essential to our physical health and mental well-being.
Inspired by the park's wooded surroundings, there are also monkey bars, blocks of logs, and an open field. The Let's Play SF campaign, which is behind the playground renovations, plans to renovate and complete the remaining 6 parks by 2022.
Coming up, a record-breaking rainstorm hits central China. The damage appears to be extensive, with apparent deaths and injuries revealed on social media. And a huge explosion in a metal factory in central China. Floodwater broke through the factory's wall and caused a chemical reaction with a high-temperature solution. Find out more here on NTD News. A record-breaking rainstorm hit central China, causing extensive damage. Unlike the Chinese official media outlet reports, apparent deaths and injuries are revealed through social media. A flood also caused the explosion of a local chemical plant. Some even said it resembled a nuclear explosion. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
A record-breaking rainstorm hit central China. So far, the damage appears extensive, with collapsed streets, cars being washed away, flooded subway stations, and apparent deaths and injuries revealed through social media. Storm clouds dumped a whopping 8 inches of rain on the city of Zhengzhou in just 1 hour on Tuesday. That's equal to 1/3 of the area's yearly average rainfall. 5 national weather stations in the province saw the highest daily rainfall reports since their establishment. An analyst from the Central Weather Station commented on the extreme conditions online, writing on Twitter that this is the strongest rainfall he's seen in his entire career. Video shows torrents washing away cars and flooding subway stations. Media reports say the floodwaters reach nearly 40 inches deep in some parts of the city, and it's only getting worse as the rains refuse to let up. One video shows a street as it collapses amid the rainstorm, seemingly devouring several people. Some social media comments have started to question official reports. One Twitter user writes, "Official media say only 1 person died from the flood, but what about them?" More apparent casualties are still being revealed through social media. The situation has become especially dangerous in some subway stations, while a few lucky ones are rescued. Amid the turmoil, the country's main state-backed broadcaster, China Central Television, has been busy reporting about flooding in Europe and has claimed the Chinese citizens who were trapped in the subway tunnels have been safely evacuated. Flooding in central China's Henan province led to an explosion in a metal factory. The flames went up early Tuesday morning. Just a warning, some viewers may find the following footage disturbing due to its graphic nature. Authorities said the floodwater in a nearby river overflowed the riverbank and caused the factory's wall to collapse. When the water flooded the high-temperature solution in the alloy tank, it set off the explosion. Some local residents said the explosion shattered windows miles away, and window frames almost fell off. Others said the explosion caused a huge shaking, and they were woken up by it. They felt as though there was an earthquake. Chinese state-run media haven't reported any casualties. NTD cannot independently verify the casualties. This explosion isn't an isolated case. Massive explosions in chemical plants occurred frequently in China, causing heavy casualties. According to Chinese state-run media, between 2016 and 2018, there were more than 600 accidents in chemical companies in the country. In 2019, a chemical plant exploded in a town in eastern China's Jiangsu province. According to Chinese state media, it led to about 80 deaths. And 5 years before that, again in the same province, a serious explosion happened in another chemical plant, causing almost 100 deaths. And then in 2015, just 80 miles east of Beijing, a chemical plant exploded in Tianjin City. Almost 170 people died.
Coming up, a new report says British laws should be changed to give citizens the same free speech protections as the First Amendment does in the United States. That and more here on NTD News.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here with a new message about your Medicare benefits. You may be entitled to transportation, meals, and expanded coverage for dental work that includes extractions, fillings, and dentures, all at no additional cost. Plus, depending on your zip code, you may be entitled to the Medicare benefit that adds money to your Social Security check every single month. Call and get everything you deserve. Call now. It's free.
I'm on a fixed income, so I called to get money added to my Social Security check. They helped me so much.
I called to save money on copays, get prescriptions, transportation, and my dental work covered. I couldn't believe I was spending money I don't have to spend.
Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline, and you can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-764-1930. That's 1-800-764-1930 now.
Calls to give freedom of expression in the UK the same legal protection as the United States. A new report commissioned by Lawrence Fox's Reclaim Party says social media companies shouldn't censor lawful content and employers shouldn't be allowed to sack workers for their speech. Here's NTD's Jane Werrell with more.
A new legal report demands British laws should be changed to give UK citizens the same free speech protections as the First Amendment does in the United States. It's commissioned by Lawrence Fox's Reclaim Party. The former actor says the report looks at where free speech is being impinged and what needs to change.
The general thing is social media companies shouldn't be censoring people. HCOGs are terrible. Scottish hate crime bill is disastrous, and don't police my tweets, thank you very much. That's the LOS version of it. The legal version of it goes 54 pages and is it's not a page turner, but it's extremely important.
The report calls for revoking guidance that records non-crime hate incidents, bringing in legislation to allow debate without censorship and protection for employees' speech. It comes amid concerns over cancel culture when people with dissenting views to a particular narrative have been cancelled, which can result in them losing their jobs, being banned from social media platforms or blocked from speaking at events. For Fox, it's something that calls close to home.
Well, I was an actor for a long time, and then I voiced an opinion, and then that was not acceptable to the, what are they called, the wokery, you know. And so they sort of ended my acting career, and then I thought, wow, there's a real problem with free expression in this country, because if I'm expressing a moderate view, and that view is enough to have my career ended, imagine what's happening to someone who's has less of a platform than I do, has less of a safety net in certain ways than I do. So I thought it was a cause so important that I wanted to get involved, you know. So we started a political party to deal with it, the Free Speech Party.
In the foreword, former Supreme Court Judge Lord Sumption says there's a high social cost of suppressing opinions we believe to be mistaken. He writes how Britain's Royal Society recently proposed legislation and punishment of those who produced and disseminated false information about vaccines. What they mean by false information is information inconsistent with the scientific consensus as defined by some recognised authority. He says knowledge advances by confronting contrary arguments, not by suppressing them. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
Renting designer clothes is gaining popularity. Even world-renowned London department store Harrods has a fashion rental pop-up. NTD's Natalia Nutting has the story.
Choosing a designer gown from luxury London department store Harrods could set you back hundreds or even thousands of pounds. But now you can pick one up for a fraction of the retail price by renting it, then giving it back.
So you could rent a dress that costs thousands of pounds for £40 or £50 per day. So it really is the most incredible opportunity.
This boutique pop-up is being run by My Wardrobe HQ, an already established luxury fashion rental platform. It recently hit the headlines after providing Carrie Johnson, wife of the Prime Minister, with her wedding dress and clothes for the recent G7 summit.
Carrie has actually rented from us before several times. She likes the idea of rental, likes the idea of not damaging the planet. But I think it's really brought an awareness to a much, much broader audience than ever before.
Renting outfits is not only for one-off events. Clothes are often worn just a few times during pregnancy, when women's bodies are frequently changing.
Women, on average, purchase 21 new items of clothing during pregnancy, and once they hit postpartum, that number continues to increase. So intrinsically, the maternity sector is incredibly wasteful.
Mason was pregnant during lockdown and realized renting clothes might be a better option. That's when she came up with the idea of For the Creators, a maternity and postnatal fashion rental marketplace.
And I think what makes us slightly different to other fashion rental platforms is that pregnant women and new mums need to source staples. You know, they need to build out a new wardrobe of staple items such as dungarees and jeans and coats.
My Wardrobe HQ customers can rent items for between 4 and 14 days. For the Creators allows pregnant women to rent up to 3 months at a time. They both hope if more people turn to renting, fewer clothes will end up in the landfill. Natalia Netting, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox. We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.